Hare Krishna, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We are continuing to read from Caitanya Caritamrita Adi Leela. We are on chapter 7. We have been reading the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada to text 140. We continue reading the purport. Partial realization of the Absolute Truth as impersonal Brahman denies the complete opulences of the Lord. This is a hazardous understanding of the Absolute Truth. Unless one accepts all the features of the Absolute Truth, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's knowledge is imperfect. So our first realization of God is impersonal. Impersonal, that God is not a person, he's light. That's our first realization of God. Then we have to go further because it's not a complete realization. Then when we go further, we realize, oh, I'm not God. But there is a Paramatma in my heart and in everyone's heart. That is Paramatma realization. Then, but this is also not the complete realization. We go further and we realize, oh, God is a person and I can speak to him. I can be face to face with him. I can engage in loving relationship with him. Now, the relationship between the Jivatma and God is not material. We may think, oh, relationship means to do with the body, but we have to understand the body is dead matter. The body is dead. It doesn't have life. So the real relationship is between the Jivatma and Krishna. And understanding this complete that God is a person, Krishna, he's God, he's a person. Then from his body, there is this light coming out, which is called the Brahman effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti. So it's the light which is coming out, which is pervading everywhere, just like from the sun planet, the sunshine is coming up. From Krishna's body, this light is coming up, and he's pervading this entire universe as the Paramatma. Krishna is omnipresent. How? As Paramatma. He's there in everyone's heart. Now, because he's in everyone's heart, doesn't mean he's not a person. He is. He's still a person and he's there in Golok Vrindavan enjoying his pastimes. Now, one may say, but I don't believe it. It's against my belief system. That's okay, because our belief does not change the truth. The truth is the truth. Whether we believe in it, whether we accept it, whether we have faith in it, it doesn't matter. It's the absolute truth and we can't change it. So Sripad Ramanujacharya in his Vedanta Sangraha says, Jnanena dharmina swarupam api nirupitam na tu jnana matram brahmeti katham idam avagamyate. He thus indicates that the real identity of the Absolute Truth must be understood in terms of both his knowledge and his characteristics. So this is how to understand the Absolute Truth. Understand Absolute Truth by knowing about him, and also Absolute Truth has characteristics. Characteristics doesn't mean only to the body. This material world is a perverted reflection. So reflection exists because reality is there. There is a person in front of the mirror, and that's the reason we can see the reflection. If the person was not there, there would be no reflection. Similarly, characteristics, we see characteristics in the material world. Why? Because there is spiritual characteristics in the spiritual world. And we need to hear about them from the devotees who are speaking from the scriptures. Simply to understand the absolute truth, to be full of knowledge, is not sufficient. It's not to understand, okay, the absolute truth has all the knowledge, but he's a person. He has qualities. He has amazing, amazing qualities. In the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad 119, we find the statement, here servant Gyaha Sarvavid, which means that the absolute truth knows everything perfectly. But we also learn from the Vedic description, Parasya Shaktir Vividheva Shruyate, that not only does he know everything, but he also acts accordingly by utilizing his different energies. So Krishna, he has perfect knowledge. He's the speaker of the Vedas. He's the original speaker of the Vedas. So he speaks and he's created this material world. He's created the spiritual world. How? By his energies. Krishna is omnipotent. God is omnipotent. And simply by his will, all these energies act wonderfully to create this entire cosmic manifestation. Thus, to understand that Brahman, the Supreme, is conscious, is not sufficient. So we may say, okay, that matter is dead. Brahman is conscious. Yes, it's good, very good. Understanding this is very good because most of us don't even understand that there is Brahman. Most of us don't even understand that we are not the body, that it's not only matter. So understanding the Brahman that is spiritual, is conscious, is very good. But we need to understand how God is a person and how he's acting wonderfully by his energies. Just understanding about Brahman, about consciousness, is not the complete understanding of the absolute truth. Mayavad philosophy simply informs us of the consciousness of the absolute truth, but does not give us information of how he acts with his consciousness. That is the defect of that philosophy. So understanding, yes, spirit is full of consciousness, very good. But what does the spirit do? What does God do? How does he act? Where does he live? What does he like? What does he not like? What information about him? We get all that information in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, from the pure devotees. And then when we hear about God, we will have our original love of God, which is there in our heart, will awaken. It will help us arouse our love of God. The more we hear about Krishna and his amazing activities. Is that okay? You could read a little more from this. Bhagwan Prapti Hetu Yekari Upaya Vanadi Bhakti Krishna Praptira Sahaya. It is only by devotional service, beginning with hearing, that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the only means to approach him. So just now we heard that it's not enough to understand that God is completely full of knowledge, that he's spiritual. But we need to understand God's characteristics, how God is using his energies. So how will we know? We have to hear about him. That's the only way that we can understand him, only by hearing. Now hearing, we need to know who to hear from. We need to hear from the pure devotees. Why? Because they know God. They have seen him. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshayanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Approach a self-realized spiritual master. Approach him, serve him, inquire from him submissively, and he will show you the truth because he has seen the truth. So this devotional service begins by hearing about God. So we need to hear about him from the devotees. Mayavadi philosophers are satisfied simply to understand Brahman to be the sum total of knowledge. But Vaishnava philosophers not only know in detail about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also know how to approach him directly. So understanding that yes, God exists, Brahman exists, that is spirituality. But how to get more detailed information? How to go there? how to be situated really on the platform of Brahman. What do we do when we are on the platform of Brahman? Who is there on the platform of Brahman? We can get all this knowledge. The method for this is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as 9 kinds of devotional service, beginning with hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Text 23, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. The 9 kinds of devotional service are hearing about Krishna. So devotional service begins by hearing about Krishna. Lord Kapila Dev is also saying, hear about Krishna. That's what we have to do. This is the beginning of devotional service. And what kind of hearing should it be? Hearing with attention, hearing to let the message touch our heart, not hearing from one ear and taking it out. And when we have heard sufficiently, when we have heard properly, then we will automatically chant about Krishna. When we have heard properly, we will chant. And when we are hearing and chanting properly, we will remember him. Devotional service begins with this, hearing, chanting, and remembering. So these 3 are very, very important for us at our stage. And it goes further as one gets advanced. But these 3 are never given up, hearing, chanting, and remembering. Hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting is never given up. Then as one progresses further, goes to remembering, then Pada Sevanam, offering service to his lotus feet, like Lakshmi Devi. Offering him worship in the temple, that's deity worship, Archanam. Offering prayers to him, Vandanam. Akrur is an example of this. He got perfection just by offering prayers to Krishna. Working as his servant, Dasyam. This is Hanumanji. He is the servitor of Lord Ramachandra. Making friendship with him, that's Arjuna. Krishna and Arjuna's friendship is famous. Till today we are hearing about it. And unreservedly surrendering unto him. Atma Nivedanam, completely opening our heart to Krishna, surrendering everything to him. Bali Maharaj did that. One can directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by executing these 9 kinds of devotional service, of which hearing about the Lord is the most important. Shravanadi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has very favorably stressed the importance of this process of hearing. So hearing about Krishna. These 9 processes of devotional service are there. One can take up 1 process, 2 process, 3 process, or all the processes. Even if 1 process we can do it perfectly, we can get perfection. Simply by hearing Parikshit Maharaj, he got perfection. He went back to the spiritual world. He heard Srimad Bhagavatam. So according to his method, if people are simply given a chance to hear about Krishna, certainly they will gradually develop their dormant awareness or love of God. That's what we have to do. We have to hear about Krishna. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udaya. Caitanya Caritamrita Madhya Lila. Madhya, chapter 22, text 107. 107. Love of God is dormant in everyone. And if one is given a chance to hear about the Lord, certainly that love develops. So love of God is there in each and every one of us. We may call ourselves Gyan Yogi or Karma Yogi or Ashtanga Yogi or Dhyana Yogi. Doesn't matter. Each of us have love of God. And when we begin to hear about God when we begin to hear about God from the devotees, what happens is our dormant love of God begins to revive. It begins to develop. The seed of love which is there in our heart begins to sprout because we are watering that seed by hearing. Our Krishna consciousness movement acts on this principle. We simply give people the chance to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give them prasadam to eat. And the actual result is that all over the world, people are responding to this process and becoming pure devotees of Lord Krishna. We have opened hundreds of centers all over the world just to give people in general a chance to hear about Krishna and accept Krishna's prasadam. These two processes can be accepted by anyone, even a child. It doesn't matter whether one is poor or rich, learned or foolish, black or white, old or still a child. Anyone who simply hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and takes prasadam is certainly elevated to the transcendental position of devotional service. So we should hear and, if possible, give this facility of hearing to others, connect everyone to Krishna, because everyone has love of Krishna in our hearts. And by taking up this process, we can go back home, back to Godhead, be situated in our original position. So we hear sufficiently and we give Krishna to others. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you so much for listening in and joining in. Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Shilpa Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Hare Krishna.